guys, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. I love the idea of in the room, and it's nice to feel like we're all together discussing how to travel with our incredible kids. I am a nurse practitioner. I am executive director of Braids Place, which is in Utah, and we are a home and community-based pediatric palliative care program. So all of our kiddos are medically complex as well as their family members. I am also a bereaved mom and a mama of a special needs kiddo with medical complexities, and I'm grateful to be here. I truly appreciate everything Courageous Parent Network does. They do an awesome job, and I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight.
Thank you, Becky, very much. Elizabeth, why don't you go next?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Schuster. I'm very, very excited to be here tonight as well. I'm very passionate about travel. I've been passionate about travel my whole life, and it didn't stop me with having 3 kids and a husband in tow. And my youngest daughter had a very severe neurological disease that caused a lot of medical complications and severe disabilities. But I'm looking forward to talking about some of the things that we did, the good, the bad, and a lot of the funny things that happened along the way to us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Irene, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Irene Jakubiak. I have a 16-year-old son, Riley, who has epilepsy and a rare gene mutation, KCTD7, and we love to travel and take adventures. We've done quite a bit of travel, and we're always up for new adventures.
Great. Thank you, Irene. And Candace.
Hi, everybody. I'm Candace. Travel and my kids are my 2 most favorite things, so I'm super happy to be here. I've been a flight attendant for a major airline for about 17 years. I'm a single mom to 2. Harper is 11. My daughter Emma is 13. Harper has a rare form of epilepsy, along with seizures daily. He is legally blind. He has respiratory insufficiency, so he's on a ventilator at night. So we have to pack all of that whenever we travel. He's GJ fed, wheelchair bound, etc. So we have a lot of challenges that we have to face when we travel, but it doesn't stop us from doing so.
Thank you very much, Candace. I'm sure you'll have a lot to share about that airplane travel. Okay, I think we'll just launch right into it. So Becky can introduce you to some of the great resources that we've co-produced. And Becky, you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right, how's that looking?
It looks great to me.
Great. I want to reiterate again, it's great to be here with you guys as we go through this material. Courageous Parents Network has placed most of this and more on their website, as has Braids Place. And so don't feel like you have to be screenshotting or writing things down, but I do want you to write down comments, and I do want you to write down questions. We're going to start with a little PowerPoint presentation here and then go into a great comments and Q&A session. So write down thoughts that you have, comments or questions, but otherwise after this, you'll get everything you see, all of my notes, and even more after. So no need to feel like you have to write things down too much. And I'm so excited about talking about travel. What a great time of year to introduce it and to get going on traveling with children with medical complexities. Some of the really great things to think about and to prepare with when traveling with a child with medical complexities is setting realistic expectations, and we're going to start there, but also choosing housing that fits, coordinating with your medical team. We'll talk about navigating your mode of travel and how to choose between them and how to help that be successful, as well as your medical stuff. That's where we'll spend the bulk of our presentation time, is talking about being sure that you're medically prepared and have everything that you need while you're traveling. First step towards a successful, fun travel is exploring is establishing expectations. We've all seen some pretty hilarious travel movies that we can think of where everything under the sun went wrong. And if that were real, it would only be comical to those of us on the outside, right? But we really hope to avoid a lot of those things by preparing. But really, we want to start with exploring our expectations. As we mentioned, you'll find more resources on the website. And one of those is a worksheet to kind of walk you through these questions, but really exploring for yourself, for your family members, and as a whole family, what is important to you about travel, about this particular travel? Why are you doing it? What are your hopes? What might this trip improve, reduce, provide? And then also, is there something that you're worried about with taking this trip, or what problems might this trip create? And really hone in on those expectations that you have and set realistic expectations. There's a couple reasons that we encourage our families to do that, and understanding those expectations can become something that we use to be sure that our travel decisions are centered on what's most important to us, right? As we decide, well, if what's most important to me is doing something new and an adventure with my child, then that will help me to make good decisions as I'm planning it. Another thing is that as we do this together and with each other in the family, I'll better understand the expectations of those traveling with us, and I can help those be accomplished or point out sometimes how things that go wrong, they're really not in the way of our expectations. We can still be enjoying time together, even though we're waiting for the airlines to deliver our lost luggage or something, and really help each other have good expectations that are grounded in our priorities. And that goes a long way, not only before the trip, but on the trip, and then even after the trip, it really comes. Another thing that we really want everybody to do is take a look at who is best to participate on this trip by coming. Sometimes we have a lot of expectations on what a family vacation should mean. We just worked with a family to plan a trip to California, and they really felt like they needed to spend some extra attention on their well children. But mom was like, how can we go on a family vacation and not bring everyone? And so we talked about that, and we talked about how every trip isn't for everybody, and let go of those expectations that are set or rigidness that we have in our head, and really evaluate who is best to come on this trip. What's the purpose? What's behind it? And when they got back, they found out that the awesome respite staff, that their child that stayed at home and did a staycation, if you will, he had an incredible time, and he didn't quite realize he wasn't having a very awesome planned vacation himself. And so it went really well. So if it's time to nurture your marriage a little bit with a couples trip or whatever it is, really be willing to evaluate and decide carefully who comes on this trip, and know that every trip isn't meant for everybody. And also, I want to end kind of the conversation on expectations with being flexible. We all know about bamboo. Did you know it grows some of the varieties 1 meter a day, like 3 feet a day? That's such growth. And when we talk about flexibility, inherent in bamboo type of flexibility is strength and resiliency. Sometimes packing is stressful. Sometimes travel is stressful. There's a lot that's out of our control. And if we can be flexible and bend and that sort of thing, focus on your priorities, plan, for the best, the worst, and everything in between. One of the things that we like to encourage our families to do before travel is to set in your head, okay, if my stress level gets to a 6 out of 10, I'm going to practice these things, and I'm going to actually learn how to do them beforehand so that it doesn't get to an 8 out of 10. And then because it might get to an 8 out of 10, we want you to pick something that when it gets to an 8 out of 10, you can remember your priorities, you can relax, you can be more mindful, and really enjoy the how you're doing as opposed to the what, and flexibility is just so key to that. Whether you're traveling to the next city, the next country, it's a great way to share new experiences. This is a quote from a parent. And before we jump too far into travel, I want to just give a staycation a little bit of attention and love. And again, you'll find an entire resource dedicated on the CPN's website for staycations. So we won't jump into it too long, but sometimes if you haven't traveled with your medically complex child before, or you're not sure that you can load everything up or how far you want to be away from your medical providers, a staycation is a perfect way to dip your toe in the water, to give it a try, to meet the best of both worlds. And it doesn't even have to mean staying at home. You can check into a local hotel or an Airbnb. There are some tips with staycations, and most of them, once you start thinking about it, are pretty obvious. Act like you're on vacation. Minimize your housework. Don't answer your work calls or your neighbor calls. Think about what you really look forward to on travel vacations. If it's maybe time with your partner, that once the kids are conked out because the day was so busy, that you really get some great conversation time with your partner and just time with that relationship. Go ahead and recreate that even during a staycation and at home. Find those, again, those expectations, those things that are important to you on travel vacations, and make them work. Include them as you do a staycation. And again, in the extra resources, we have some great links of how to find some great things. What a staycation is a great opportunity if you were raised in the area that you live in now, to walk your kids down your childhood memory lane a little bit. Staycations can be really fulfilling for families with children with medical complexities. But as you decide about your travel and you're taking a look at every option, tools like a pro and con list, being sure that you're thinking and looking outside of the box are really helpful. Have you always wanted to do a beach trip with your child, or does the unpack once and be done of a cruise sound really appealing to you? Do you want it with family, so that building relationships with extended family is important? Go through these options of what kind of trip that you want to have. And again, you've got your expectations there to help guide what's most important, and take a look and really evaluate. Also, Jennifer kind of alluded to this, you might have some deal breakers that you feel like are really relevant to you that are not flexible, like, I don't want to change my adult-sized child. I don't want to change them on an airplane. That's okay to realize that those are there for good reason, and choose a vacation style that fits into that. And then for sure, be willing to lean on others to help make your travel happen, and make the decision of what type of vacation and what you want included, the where, that sort of thing, in alignment with what your hopes and expectations are for that. Jumping first into travel by car. Travel by car can offer a lot of flexibility, a lot of adaptability, and a lot of maybe easier packing options. Travel by car is easy with maybe more rigid schedules, more rigid cares. Comfort might be easier in a car, or it might not, because you'll be in the car a lot longer. You'll have to take a look at that. Some tips for car travel is to keep your supplies, like find a spot for the supplies that you know you'll need and keep them in that spot. We're a big fan of clear bags so that you can see what's in them. We like organizers on the back of your bucket seats. Kind of door organizers. You put them on the back of your bucket seats, and you can put all of your hygiene supplies in there, or all of your sensory supplies in there. You can put some bins under the benches so that you've got just lots of room that you might think of how to creatively pack that car and have those supplies available to you. Some things with car travel that you for sure want to do is to not forget your handicap placard, Old devices are a really awesome tip for travel in general. Those old phones that sit in drawers or go somewhere, they're great to preload and download things on, and you can use those without a current phone plan, without any Wi-Fi, and they're a great tool for the trip for times that you have to wait, that sort of thing. Talking about airplane travel for a minute, as we jumped into kind of learning from the experts about airplane travel, I took a couple nice deep breaths. I realized that there are great tools out there to accommodate traveling with medical needs. Every airline has some unique policies. The FAA has set a lot of things in place that everybody has to follow, but every airline does have some uniquenesses about their planes, about requirements. If you need oxygen, how much battery life do you have to have on your devices that will be needed for the plane in case of travel time changes. And my advice on that is to let the experts help. Call the airlines and talk to their staff. This is what they do. They're very accessible once you get through that hold line, and they know their policies. They know what equipment is not allowed in use during a plane ride, that sort of thing. And so go ahead and call, use the experts, let them help you as you're deciding also on the flights that you're going to book. I'm going to step here. We talk a little bit about the TSA staff, and we'll have links for you, but there's a thing called TSA Cares Line, and that is just for people with accommodations. And when you call them, they will answer every question in the world for you. Some of the things I learned is that while you can't bring oxygen tanks, compressed oxygen tanks on flights, you certainly can bring approved oxygen compressors and concentrators, and those, they have companies that you can rent them from, but your DME equipment that gets you your oxygen equipment, if you do this in advance time, they'll probably loan you one that's a concentrator that meets your child's needs. But if not, there's ones that you can rent. For your carry-ons, everything that you can't live without for 24 hours, we recommend that you carry it on. And I know that might sound like a lot, but it's a much better choice than having it not arrive with you. All of your equipment, all of your medications, they don't count against your carry-on limit. And so you'll have as much room as can accommodate. And if the plane is a little tight, they'll do a gate check, and that's a much safer way to go with equipment, with wheelchairs, that sort of thing, to have them gate check. So our recommendation, if it's something that you'll need in the next 24 hours, carry it on with you, bring it on with you, keep your medications in their original containers, have a list with you, put them all in a zippy bag. Maybe it's a 2.5 gallon size zippy bag. And then the limits for liquid, that won't apply to anything medical, hygiene, or that your child needs. And again, as you call that TSA Cares line, they'll walk you through all that. And then you give them a 72-hour notice before your flight time, and they will escort you right through TSA Cares and right through the security checkpoint. We talked with them to see, would it be better to try to do like the pre-check or the TSA Cares, and TSA's opinion was pre-check is great, but that the TSA Cares you'll get through faster and they're more knowledgeable about this sort of thing. And I'm talking too much, so we're going to zip through some slides here because I want to get to the medical, but I do want you to know that all of this stuff you'll find as resources. Layover versus nonstop lodging. I think the comment I'm going to make on this, since we're running a little bit short on time, is that what is accessible to you might not mean the same thing to the gentleman at the front desk that you call. So ask specific questions. Are there stairs getting to the restaurant, as opposed to, is the restaurant wheelchair accessible? Be specific. On the resource you have, we've even given you a script that can guide your questions for them. But lodging will become your home away from home. And so choose carefully. Packing and preparing for your trip. 70% of trip stress is from planning and preparation, but good to know that your personal happiness will increase up to 8 weeks before your trip. So start packing and let that kind of counterbalance out that packing stress. We've got some great resources on packing, so I won't jump into that, but to say, as you're making your list, make your list a few different ways, by body system, by child, by just supplies. Make it 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time so you have time to order extra of things. And then as you organize, I recommend that you make a bag that has most of what you need for your first night, everyone's pajamas, all in that one bag to make that first night a little bit easier for you, because you'll be ready to get some good rest and have that simplified. If you want to ship ahead, it's a good tool, but do it carefully, do it with tracking when it arrives, call the hotel, find out exactly where it is. I want to jump into the medical part of traveling and how to prepare for your medical needs. I want to give a shout out real quick to the Pennsylvania Palliative Care Coalition's Lightning Bug app. If you haven't used it, it's an excellent free resource to plan or to organize your child's medical information. And if you're going to do this for the trip, might as well do it on the Lightning Bug app, and then you can print it off for the trip. You have access to it, but you'll have the link to their free app, and it's a real fantastic way. It was built just for medically complex kids in mind. But some of the things you want to get together about their medical information is a good case of emergency. As you're putting their medical information together, be sure that you email it to yourself, maybe even make a Google Drive, take pictures of things so that you're not worried if you lose that paper. You can always pull it up on your phone. We'll pretty much always have our phones with us, and it's a great way to keep all of your medical stuff organized. I do want to talk about meeting with your doctors beforehand. They will think of things that are connected to their specialty. Your neurosurgeon will know how that flight may or may not affect your child's shunt. So talk with your specialist, let them know about the trip, ask them for their input, and then also check with them specifically about symptoms that you anticipate might worsen with the travel and how to accommodate that. We've created a form here for you guys to use right here. And again, this is available to you online, but I'm so sorry about that. Let me get back to that. To take a symptom and say, this is what it normally looks like, say dystonia or uncomfortable muscle movements. This is what the baseline is. This is what travel and being in one position in the car might make it worse, might make it better, that sort of thing. And then here's a plan of what we're going to do if this symptom worsens, and it can have treatments, it can have medications, it can have, anything that you and that physician or doctor can think of to address it and anticipate for it in coming up. That's something that is really important, not only to go with a peace of mind, but to go so that solutions are right on hand. Go with extra supplies, bring a few days of extra meds, extra everything. And then also choose your child's activities carefully based on their capacities. Different muscle tones on different roller coaster rides is really to be considered. Being out in the heat, being in salt water, all of those things might have unique challenges for your child, and there might be things that maybe they shouldn't participate or should step out of. So just as you're doing activities, think through for a little bit on the needs of your child. Make those anticipatory worsening of signs and symptoms plans. This is the form, basically the same, but a little bit less detail, that they can all go on one form. and lean on your doctors to help with your orders, with your extra med prescriptions, with your extra needs. Your DME supplier can help you get extra supplies to last for the whole trip, or those extra batteries that you'll need to last, all day. And let them help, let them get that stuff to you. Our presentation is to be done at 6:30, and we're not too far off of that, but just
Becky,
to,
go ahead and take your time and finish up. You're
Okay.
doing a great job, and this is a lot of great information. And I just want to go on to say, Becky is going quickly through a lot of deep content, but you will get the resources that will give you all the depth behind what Becky is telling you. So just keep on going, Becky. You're doing a
yeah,
great job.
okay, that's fantastic. That traveling with medical complexities, the reason we start with expectations is because a lot of those plans can be overwhelming. A lot of them, talking with your doctors can be a little disconcerting of like, well, why would you want to do that? Or are you sure? Or whatever, but start with your expectations, take it piece by piece, give yourself lots of time. But I love how this quote ends. The more you get out and explore the world, the better at it you'll get. It's more accessible than we think. And if we do forget some things, we'll be able to, as long as we've got our meds and those critical things, we'll be able to figure those things out as we go. If I can be specific on some of the things that we kind of went quickly through, in your resources, you'll get all the phone numbers and links for each airline, for TSA, to find for the national parks. There's a free pass for those with disabilities, and the link is right there for how to acquire that, and that lets your whole car full in. There's a lot of resources in the materials that you'll find on Courageous Parents Network page. And so with that, that is kind of the end of presentation. I'm excited to hear from some of the other parents. One thing we didn't include in this is how to memorialize your trip, and I'm excited to talk about that in the Q&A time.
Thank you, Becky, for giving us all of that information. And I know that there's going to be questions that will come up that will be directed towards a lot of the resources that you gave out. And again, I just want to say, many of them will be in more detail forwarded to you by email. So I'd love to open it up to our panel of parents and just sort of say, was there a part of the presentation that struck you, or a component of the travel introduction that Becky made that you might want to speak about? I know she rushed through things. And if you were here to watch the waiting room PowerPoint slide, Irene was kind enough to forward us how she packs and travels with all of Riley's feeding tube necessities. So maybe Irene, if you could start off and sort of just, was there any part of that that you would like to add as a helpful tip to?
I've created, like she said, like you have a packing list. So I have a packing list. It's in Excel, and I say like, so a Mickey, I need one extra for a trip. Extensions, I need one per 7 days. Like different things I say, like I write in exactly like how many I need per day or per week, so that when I'm packing, I just look and I go through my closet. I start at the top and I just work my way to the bottom, and I make a big mess. And then I pack it up. I always carry a Mickey button like in a Ziploc bag that's out of the box because the box is too bulky, but I just throw it in a Ziploc bag in the backpack because GI says it's not a sterile thing. So all I have is 2 syringes, lube, a Mickey, and some gauze, and it's in a little snack Ziploc bag, and it takes up no space, but I have it if I need it. I've never needed it, but it's there quickly if I need it. We do TSA pre-check and we do TSA cares. Just because with the wheelchair and all the medical supplies, if we don't have the TSA pre-check, we have to have a complete pat down to go through. But because we have the pre-check, it eliminates the pat down, and we fly 1 to 3 times a year. So it's definitely worth the little bit of craziness that we had to go through. I don't know. we pack a lot and just make it work and have fun and trying to be quick here.
Yep, that's okay. You know, Candace, I'd love to hear more about airline travel from you since, first of all, you're in the industry, and obviously Harper has a lot of medical complexities, including one thing we never could achieve, which was correct positioning on the airplane for my son who couldn't support himself. And so it was unrealistic to use that chair that they asked you to transport them on, nor could he really sit in the airline seat. And he was too big for a car seat support.
Right. Airline travel can be really overwhelming, even for families, just individuals, but families that do not have special needs. So adding somebody with complex needs just kind of adds a whole lot. I definitely think taking enough time to go through TSA, through security, because a lot of people are rushed. They think, oh, you know, an hour and a half will be plenty of time, but we always get there super early. Just, you know, I don't know how long TSA is going to take to want to look at my son's formula or look at his ventilator. I have never had a problem in the TSA line. They've always been very helpful. We have never done TSA cares, and we have not done airline travel since the last time was 2019, so pre-COVID. I do have to have another adult travel with me now that my son is bigger. So we've kind of put airline travel on the back burner. But whenever we were doing airline travel, I've always had TSA be super helpful. They always ask me, you know, how can we help you get through this line faster? And how can we make sure that your son is comfortable? I definitely think calling the CARES number would be helpful. In terms of seating on the airplane, my son is a full lift. He's non-ambulatory. There is a harness. It's called Kids Cares harness. You can Google it. It's on Amazon. It's on buyebuybaby.com, and I can send you the link, Jennifer. But it actually just it clamps behind the tray table. So if you have the seat, and then the tray table behind the seat where my son's gonna sit, I put the tray table down and I kind of clamp it together, and then I lift him onto the seat, and then I strap him in. And while we're flying, I do have to hold on to him. So, because he has a little bit of head control, but not a lot. But he has had very successful airplane rides in that harness. He has the harness and he has the airplane seatbelt. So it seems to work for him. Like I said, I do have to have two adults, one to help me put him in the airplane, and then and then another adult to break down his chair and put it in the belly. So we have not done airline travel in a while, but I'm hoping to pick it up next year. I loved Becky's presentation. That was awesome. One thing that I did want to reiterate is the difference between layover and nonstop. A lot of people see the word direct and they think that that means directly from point A to point B, but actually direct is with a layover. So make sure if you're going to do airline travel to make sure that you understand exactly what you're booking, because we have a lot of people that make that mistake, unfortunately.
I would also add that when I was flying with my son Benjamin, sometimes actually picking a layover flight was a better situation because he needed a break from sitting in a seat and he needed to get up and move around. And so that layover gave him, you know, an hour or two to expend some energy. And then everybody flying with us was a lot happier.
Yes,
So,
everybody has something and to walk. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, I know you did a ton of travel with Adelaide, and we'd love to hear, like, did you have like what was the worst thing that happened or the best thing that happened, or what's the biggest tip you have?
Yeah. So we did a lot of travel all throughout the US. We did some international travel as well. All the tips that everybody's been giving so far, spot on. We did TSA pre-check for everybody in our family. And I will say, you know, she was the youngest of three kids. So I think what really helped us with my other two, a lot of people would probably attest to this, when you have a child that has disabilities are as medically complex, the other children definitely develop a sense of independence. You kind of count on them. And we always kind of joke, we're like, okay, we're in a team, team of 5 heading out on vacation. But I think some of the best things that we've ever done as a family has been the travel. And our daughter had a very short lifespan. She passed away before her 7th birthday. And so we packed as much as we could every year. And we made our travel itinerary. We would do it 6 to 8 months in advance. We would take kind of a smaller trip, maybe like a road trip somewhere in the US, and then we would take a bigger trip, either somewhere further away in the US where we'd fly, or an international trip. And so planning it out in advance really, really helped us in coordinating what's the best time to fly and kind of working through those. But I think some of the best things are just the memories that we made and taking time to really slow down. And I think Candace said this too, needing to travel with another adult. I'm thankful my husband and I really worked together and coordinated things incredibly well. And we read each other really well. Like, we had our system getting onto an aircraft, and like, we knew who was going to take what bag. We knew exactly where everybody was going to sit. And we could read each other. We knew when the other person kind of reached their limit. And some of my best experiences have been, if you can believe it, I was thinking my perfect day. So you asked what was one of the good things that happened. One of my most perfect, absolute perfect days was, we were in Germany, and my husband took the kids to a mountain, and I stayed at the base of the mountain with my daughter, and the two of us had lunch at a 5-star restaurant while everybody else went exploring. My husband saw I hit my limit. I was exhausted. I stayed at the base of the mountain with our beautiful daughter and just relaxed. And so that was like one of those fun, unexpected, low key points. And I think you had said, you'd asked what were some of the more complicated things, or some not so good things?
Yeah. The challenges.
Yeah, some of the challenges. I think somebody put this in the chat. Changing diapers on an airplane has always been a challenge. We always wanted to do everything with the utmost dignity for our daughter. So my husband and I worked out a system where we were able to change her in a very discreet manner on the aircraft. So that always was a challenge for us. Finding a right location for where we were going to stay was a challenge. Our daughter was a very, very poor sleeper and very loud, and she would keep my other 2 children up. But when we started to realize, I think Airbnb is the way to go for us, and kind of finding that, a place where we could stay that was accessible, where she could have her own little area to stay in. And that was awesome. And the other challenge was the realization that when you get out of the country, accessibility doesn't exist in a lot of places. So I can remember literally carrying my daughter around, her 40 pounds of awesomeness, up and down castle stairs and around. And, so those were definite challenges, and dealing with all of that. But, other ups and downs that happens with travel. But I think I feel like I've spoken too much, so I'll answer more questions.
Well, I mean, we're such a small group here, and I think what I'd love to be able to do is let people in the audience ask the questions that they came burning to get some information about, because I know we're in the thick of, predominantly travel season, and I'm sure everybody came here with something that they just want a little tip or trick, and hopefully our audience can offer that to you. So does anybody have a question that they'd like to unmute and ask, or an issue that they'd like to talk about with regards to travel?
Hi, this is Emily, and I'm curious if anybody has had experience with having to get kind of emergency medical services when you're not at your home area, and what that was like, because that's kind of a big anxiety of mine.
I actually have firsthand experience with that from last year. My son uses an infinity pump, and I don't know if you're familiar with pumps, but they have the adapter that goes into the wall, and then the actual charger slides onto the adapter that goes into the wall. And I had my nurse, she took it out of the wall to wrap it up and pack it, but she forgot the actual prong. So we drove 12 hours to San Antonio, Texas, and I had no way to charge my son's pump, and it was dying, and it was very overwhelming, but I actually reached out on social media to all my nurse friends, and everybody said, just because we had been traveling for so long, and I was tired and hungry and I was very worried, but I just Googled San Antonio Children's Medical, device, and I called the number, and it actually had someone, like an on-call person, come and bring me a pump free of charge within an hour. It was the most amazing thing. Now in hindsight, I should have maybe packed the bag myself. But other than that, I think that it would be really helpful if whenever you're going somewhere to look up places, have A, B, C plan and phone numbers, and actually call and say, hey, I'm going to travel with my child. We have A, B, and C device. If anything were to go wrong, would you be able to help us? Do you carry our insurance? How does that work? So I think that's something that anybody can do. And I'm definitely going to do that next time.
Yeah. So Becky, do you have more that you could tell Emily,
Yeah.
or specifically if she doesn't have access to a wonderful team like yours who can help her with that preparation, where does she start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple thoughts that I have. One is that we have a family that did have a medical crisis, a pretty big one while on vacation. And once we settled down, that honestly, nobody wants these to happen at home either. And that we're going to go through it, but we're going through it in Florida, woohoo. And then because they had done the work before with their specialists in getting opinions and getting insight, one of the questions that we encourage you to ask is, do you have a colleague in that area that we can connect with in case there is this, in case their seizures escalate, or in case this does happen? And oftentimes you'll just get an email between you that doctor will set, and that's really great. And then the other thing is that where your lodging is, it's kind of one of the things you want to do right away is just, depending on your needs, check what the children's hospital situation is in that area. And so those are a couple of the ways to let other people help you. And then anticipating symptoms that could get worse, getting things in writing, taking pictures of, if you have home health and they have a 45 or orders written, get pictures of those, get a digital copy of those, because then as there are problems, that gives people so much baseline information. Email those to yourself and use those as a resource for you.
Elizabeth, you look like you have a few tips to add.
Yeah.
Did you have a few tips to add, Elizabeth?
Oh, yeah, we had a couple minor emergencies on the road, trying to figure out an ear infection or a UTI. And with my daughter who's nonverbal, she was unable to articulate that. So quite, interesting when you're waking up with a fever of 102. But what we did is we worked with our medical team. We were very lucky to, our daughter, all of her specialists were at Children's Hospital in Boston. And so we worked with her complex care team, and we would let them know. I contacted one doctor and I would say, this is our destination that we're going to be going to. These are the dates. Who is on a complex care team at a hospital nearby? And that would include, I did that for a couple of our trips outside of the country as well. So I came armed with like the best complex care team at the most, at the closest children's hospital. And we never had to use that, but it was such a comfort knowing that, okay, I literally have the number of somebody who would understand our needs right in my pocket at any given time. So that really relieved a lot of stress for us.
That's great. Okay.
Could I add something? I had a question on that. One thing I did, we went recently to, we were lucky enough to go to Kauai. And I actually called the emergency room manager just to talk. I said, could I talk to the manager? Because I was interested to know things like, I know there's an ER there, but how big is it? Like, are we going to have to be airlifted? And just to kind of be mentally prepared for that, and to know that go bag's going to need to be like that big. Do you know what I mean? And also I asked things like, is there a pharmacy nearby? And which pharmacy is it? And do they have real kind of meds? I just felt like I was going to a smaller place. So I really used him as a resource. And that made me feel more comforted, I guess. Because I found even just locally going on a 4 hours away, I live in Seattle, that the ERs won't care for my daughter. Like I've been sent back to Seattle
Yeah.
from a major metropolitan area, and that surprised me. So I wanted to be prepared. So
That's a
but
very good tip, because it's one you could do even if you only went on a staycation just 3 towns over. You might get sent back, to a major. So that's a very good tip.
And they're always so nice, right? I mean, these are people who want to help you. I think that's and I was curious. I also had a question, Elizabeth, because I'm interested to potentially do travel in Europe. But I'm nervous about, it's a whole different health system. Like, and maybe the medications are called different things. Like what does that look like? And
You know what we did? We on purpose eased into it. So before kids, my husband and I we traveled a little bit more adventuresome than before we had. So that's not even a correct word, but we on purpose eased into it. So the first time we did an international trip with the family, we went to Ireland. So it's an English speaking country. So no problems there in conveying what the needs are. The next trip that we did, we went to Germany only because I'd traveled there before quite a few times. So I understood, hey, I know that their country is fairly organized, and that includes the healthcare system. And then after that, we felt a little more bold and went into France and Austria. And what I noticed is that a lot of people that work in the medical field, their English is very good. The medications, I know I can't pronounce them even in English for half of my daughter's medications. So I'd always had pictures, and then I would always carry the when I could, the containers that they were in. But I was always very clear as to everything that we would need. So we kind of eased into it and developed our comfort level and made sure that we had a contact in various hospitals in those countries. And like I said before, we didn't use them, but it was really comforting knowing that it was there. I didn't trust food because my daughter was fed through a G tube. So I always prepared my own food, only because I know just there's different ingredients in food. So that was something that I just brought on my own. But yeah, I hope I answered some of your questions.
yes, thanks. That was helpful. And I like the tip about finding a specialist before you go, like that kind of connection to a place. That makes a lot of sense.
One parent also gave me the tip of contacting your own insurance company, because they may have actually an access point for you in a foreign country that you can then call and speak to and start the process. So they might have a resource for you as well. So contacting your own insurance, and then of course, don't forget to get travel insurance if you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to ask either Becky a question or one of our parents?
I have a question.
Sure.
I was curious to know if people have worked with travel agents in planning travel, and if they had any sort of recommendations on travel agents that work well with kids with disabilities and medical needs.
I have not. I'll leave that, see if one of the parents has. I think, again, what's accessible to one is maybe not to another. And if you were to do a good Google search, there are some vacation destination locations that are geared towards children with disabilities. There's a fantastic amusement park in Texas that is geared towards kids with special needs. There are those kind of places that I know of and that we've got links to in the material. But as far as a specific travel agent, I don't know of one.
There definitely, I haven't used her, but I know we tended to go to Disney pretty regularly. It's super accessible. It's super easy for special needs, and there's good children's hospitals nearby, and it's a 3-hour flight for us. So it's pretty accessible and easy enough for us. But there is a travel agent that I know of on a special, like Disney World special needs or special needs Disney, something like that. There is a travel agent that runs it, and she has children with disabilities. So she definitely, and I think she does more than just Disney. So there are definitely special need travel agents out there. And one thing I forgot to say earlier, if you're flying and your child takes Miralax, do not bring it on the plane with you. Check it, because the bomb squad will be called on you. I might know this from experience because it's a white powder. So put it into your checked luggage. And if you get there and you don't have your luggage, you can Instacart Miralax. It's an over-the-counter drug. You'll be okay. But it's a 45-minute holdup to be caught with Miralax.
All right, that is a great tip.
I've got a question. I put it in the chat also, and I appreciate the answers that I got back around being on a plane with my child and having to change his diaper. He is, already 40 pounds. And the last time I flew, I was thinking there's no way that there's room for he and I in this space. So doing everything you can ahead of time to avoid having a blowout on the plane is great. But I mean, where and how do you even change a child? Like at home, I have to lay him down because he's so, he has very low muscle tone. So he's very floppy. So I couldn't put him on a baby changing table. I don't know. I think that's literally one of the biggest reasons we haven't flown, is because I'm just terrified of what is even appropriate to ask or suggest. We're looking for all the tips besides chartering a plane, which is slightly out of the budget.
Yeah. One of the things that we love on travel are those nice large blankets that are thin, kind of rubber material on the back, maybe a beach blanket or a gym blanket. They fold up nicely and you can lay that down. We've asked a few flight attendants and a few airlines that question. They prefer the back of the plane, the restrooms that are back there. Talk to the flight attendants. They'll help kind of give you some privacy back there. And you start with their head in the hallway and their feet going into the bathroom on one of these blankets. And then you can put a Chucks under if you're worried about what that floor looks like inside the bathroom, maybe a Chucks and then your blanket. But that way, most of what needs to be private is in the bathroom kind of, but you just leave that door open, get some privacy from having people help screen that off. And then always Ziploc bags, like Ziploc bags for the remnant, Ziploc bags for all of that. But that was their best request for us as we traveled, and also for this was to just talk with the flight attendants, use the back of the plane and use that whole hallway. Don't try to squish in the restroom. Yeah.
We fly
Thank you.
South in the front of the plane because they don't have first class or anything. There's kind of like a big-ish area in the front where the flight attendants sit in the beginning, but their seats fold up. So we've had to put a blanket down in that area, and then they but I think each plane is designed a little different, but we can use that space. And it was big enough. My son's 110 pounds. So it's big enough that my husband and I can both put him on the floor, change him. And then another bonus for me is my son, I urinary cath him. So I've gotten so that I can cath him on the plane. So I don't have to worry about necessarily just changing him unless we have a blowout need to change. So we've been offered to give that up, and I'm not willing to, because it's kind of a convenient thing to say, okay, we are getting in the car in 10 minutes. I'm going to cath him, and then I know I'm safe for 3 hours, or we're getting on the plane. We're good for a while. But I know it's hard to know until you're on the plane, but there definitely are spots that you can kind of pick out and find a way to make it work.
Yeah. So I said I stopped traveling probably when my son was 13 or 14, but by then he was, pretty sizable kid and was not ambulatory and had low muscle tone as well. But the other thing that I would often do is triple or quadruple diaper him. And I would get diapers of bigger and bigger size so that I could go in quickly and easily and just take the soiled diaper and then quickly button up the next one. So I wasn't stripping him all the way down. I was just sort of taking care of it. And then the other strategy that we always did was talk to the gate agent and tell them what your situation is before you check on, because they'll often alert the crew that's coming on. And then as embarrassing as it is, I would generally say to the people sitting in front and in back of us, this is the situation, and I'm going to apologize up front if there's stinkiness, and I'm going to ask for your cooperation as I deal with it, because you're going to be happier and I'm going to be happier if we deal with it. And so sometimes you just have to, be embarrassed for 5 minutes to alleviate this, because often it was just the stress, like, what if? But I know, because I stopped flying after a while, and that was really the biggest reason that I just couldn't. And he couldn't support himself in a chair on an airplane, so it just wasn't really comfortable.
And I'll tell you from flight attendant experience, you will maybe feel embarrassed and overwhelmed, but 99% of people that are traveling have no clue what is going on around them. They're so just interested in themselves and getting from point A to point B that they're not even going to pay attention to what you're doing in the lavatory, or if you have to use the galley floor. They honestly, they don't pay attention. They really don't. And I think I wrote to you, Jennifer, I don't know if it showed up in the chat or not, but if you're wanting to travel by plane, if you want to map your child's ins and outs, like when you're doing feedings, when you're doing water, that sort of thing, and kind of map bowel movements and map urinary output, you can just kind of get to know your child's routine and maybe kind of move things around a little bit with water and with food. So to possibly eliminate not having to deal with that on the airplane, that will definitely take some organization. And we do an enema. If we're doing a morning flight, we do an enema the night before, or if it's an evening flight, we do an enema in the morning.
Okay. Does anyone
Thank
else
you.
have a question they'd like to pop on? No. Okay, well, we've reached time, but I'm going to ask my panelists to maybe just think about answering one of these two questions, which was, in all of this planning and all of this worry that happens when you're out of your own element, the reason why we go on trips, right, is to capture all of these great memories. So if you have a tip or trick about how you made sure that you focused there when you needed to, or how you distracted yourself from the worry so that you could focus on those memories, or maybe just talk a little bit about, deciding to go on a trip and how do you weigh the fact that your child is medically comparable, and especially now because it's COVID, right? We have to think about that as we all travel, actually. So, maybe we'll just start and go around, and if you guys could speak to one of those things. And Elizabeth, I'm going to put you on the spot and start with you.
Jennifer, before you do that, I see Samantha has her hand up. So could we just do the last question? It will be Samantha's.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, I missed that.
It's okay.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Oh, hi everyone. It's actually more of a suggestion. One of the things that I had a problem with was packing for my daughter, like going anywhere. She has a vent, she has all these different equipment. My husband actually bought a backpack, and we keep all of the extra supplies, like extra filters, extra Mickeys, extra extensions, things that you don't really need on hand, like on an everyday. This way you just have to grab that, and like every 6 months you can switch things out and have like a spreadsheet of what you really need. This way the nurse will go through it, and then I would go through it myself. So we'll kind of do like a tag team, or my husband will go through it and I would go through it. So that actually makes it a lot easier when packing, making sure you have all those little things, because those are the things that you really don't really think of right then and there when you're packing, So if you do it without planning a trip, you just have it. So just a little suggestion.
It's a great idea. It's always on the ready. Yep. Great. Thank you, Samantha. All right, Elizabeth, you have a last tip or trick, or how you captured those memories?
Sure. So one thing that we learned was you will go at a slower pace than you think that you're going to. And if you plan for 2 or 3 items to do in a day, you'll probably only get 1 or 2 items done. And it took a few times, and I really, really started to enjoy just going slow, sitting down, finishing a meal, sitting there and enjoying it. So I think that helped keep a lot of those memories, because we never really were able to go at a frantic pace. Obviously taking pictures and stuff like that too. But then what I did is I had my other 2 children, they were able to pick out one very special souvenir on each trip. And then they were able to pick out a special souvenir that they think that their sister would like. And we still have those. So those are still incorporated in like their, their on their dressers in their bedrooms. And for our daughter, we still have every single souvenir from every trip that we've taken. We still have it saved, and we keep those on display in her honor. So that's something that we've done.
That's a really fun one. How about you, Candace? As you're traveling around, have you figured out how you record those memories or decide whether or not you're going to travel?
Well, I'm a huge picture taker. I take pictures all day, every day, wherever I go. My son actually wasn't supposed to live past 6 months old, and he's going to be 12 in July. So once I, became used to the idea that, we're going to be able to travel and do things, I was told he wasn't going to live past 6 months, maybe a year. So once we got to 2, 3, 4, I said, okay, well, we're going to start traveling. We're going to start doing stuff. So I kind of came up with this checklist in my head. I want him to see the beach. I want him to see the mountains. I want him, New York City is my favorite city. I wanted him to go on top of the Empire State Building. I wanted him to do Disney World. So I kind of have like these like checklists that I want to do. I would love to do Europe, but I don't think that's feasible for us. So I just want to make sure he sees as much as he possibly can. So I will always decide to take the trip if that means he can see something new and experience something with his family.
Super. How about you, Irene? I know you got a lot.
We always, especially even pre-COVID, we always did risk versus benefit. And now we definitely do risk versus benefit. Like, is the risk of him getting sick worth the memory that we're gonna be able to live with? And I have like 50,000 pictures on my cell phone, and that's not an exaggeration. It's ridiculous how many pictures I have. And it's crazy. And like, we're going to Disney in 23 days. And when we were debating on what hotel to stay at, we chose a more expensive hotel that had better transportation, that was easier for Riley. Like busing versus a monorail, or busing versus walking. And busing is not easy for us. So we chose to spend the extra money because it's easier and less stressful. And that's worth our sanity, So you may have to spend more sometimes to make it a better trip, but you do what you got to do. And it's worth it in the long run to have less stress.
Thanks, Irene. I mean, Becky, you've had your own travel with your family. So do you have a piece of wisdom to share?
I think one thing that we keep hearing is the memories and the pictures, and we haven't really talked about traveling with extended family. If we don't have a nurse we can bring with us, talk a niece or a nephew or an uncle, or go somewhere where you have extended family there, because it gives opportunity for them to build relationships with our child too. And so let travel just be about that as well, and relationship building and time with family outside of our own family. That's really great.
Yeah, it is helpful. I actually have a sister-in-law now, because I took her being a sister-in-law on a trip with us. And then she and my brother ended up married as a result of the trip. So, but we took her for childcare, really. So you never know what's going to happen. Anyway, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists, and for all of your wisdom that you not only shared tonight, but also leading up to this event that helped us formulate the guides, and for Becky for that great presentation.